going on, people? Welcome to the Tactical View show, or should I say the Tactical Mesh show, or the United Mistake show. I don't know, because Cam, to talk tactics after what we saw against Brentford, I don't envy you having to break that down and give us the tactical side of it. Emotionally, us as fans, we've all made our minds up about why we lost that game. No desire, no belief, no application, just not good enough before we even got to tactics. So this show is important. And remember, when we do this show, it is purely on the tactical side. So yes, we know what's going on with signings. We know what's going on with players where you could say, oh, Fred's just not good or whatever. But we do want to break this down tactically in terms of that 90 minutes. You guys have been enjoying the show as well, even though it's back-to-back losses at the moment. So smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Cam, first of all, before we even get into the deep tactics of what went wrong and how we tried to play, what did you make of Erik Ten Hag with his starting 11 and how we set us up?
So, you know what you feel in that hour before the game when you've seen the lineups come out. And for me, what you know about Brentford, high pressing, long balls, play really direct football. You know that the duels are going to be really, really important. And then you see the team that Ten Hag's picked. Lisandro Martinez. Obviously, a lot's been made of his height, possibly a bit unfair at times, but you know against Brentford, that is something they're going to target. Brighton often play out from the back. Against us, long balls pretty much every time they had a chance. So you know that channel's going to be targeted again, and against Brentford with more physical players, that could be more of an issue. Likewise, in midfield, he's taken out Scott McTominay, who, if there's one thing he's good at, it's probably the physical side. It's in duels, he does win his duels, he's good in the air, he's good physically, and you play Fred instead. And then you swap Eriksen to put him in the deeper role that Fred's been playing all of pre-season and in the first game. It shows to me a lot of arrogance, it shows a lot of belief in Ten Hag's principles and the way we want to play, and it's reminiscent of what Guardiola was doing in his first season, where whatever happened, he would stick religiously to his principles. Everything he did, he would make sure that he sticks to the way he wants his team to play, and that is the absolute #1 priority at all times.
Just quickly, to push back on that then, to give the other side of it, I mean, he's bought this guy in for 50 odd million, that's his guy. How are we supposed to move forward if in the second game of the season, it's away to Brentford, you go, oh, well, okay, maybe not, I'm just not going to go over you, I'm going to go over Varane because I don't think... Like, if he believes in him, then he has to play him. And then with Fred, you look at how bad McTominay was in that last game, completed less passes than De Gea, couldn't pass wind, awful, yellow card. And it's like, then we would argue that you're rewarding like bad performances with other starts though, no?
Yeah, to an extent, but the problem is Fred got taken off after 53 minutes as well, so it's not like he was any good last week. Yeah. And I think what you can see from Ten Hag here is that he's trusting the team to be good technically. That's why he's played these players. Fred is better technically than McTominay, that's why he's played. Martinez, he wants left-footed passing angles, he wants his technical ability on the ball. That's why Maguire's playing as well. For all, Varane is better in a high line, obviously being quicker, being probably at times a little bit sharper on his feet. Maguire's in there because he's better on the ball, in theory. Doesn't always work out like that, but in theory he's better on the ball and offers us a few more solutions in possession. But the problem is, when these guys aren't good enough technically to keep the ball, then you see problems. And right from the start, you could see, even before the game started, you knew, if we either keep the ball well today, or we're in big trouble on defensive transitions. Because he's playing higher up the pitch. You know, we saw for both goals last week, him diving in was a massive problem. Yeah. It was a big part of it. Fred shouldn't be doing that. I don't know whether his coach do it under Solskjaer or it's just his natural game, but he's been doing it for far too long and it costs us all the time. And then you go and change him from playing the deeper role, and Eriksen's playing the deeper role now. It doesn't make sense.
What about this bit then of, and again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate because it feels weird criticising Ten Hag, but we shouldn't be afraid within 90 minutes of a game. This isn't overall, okay? Because I know there's going to be people saying it's 2 games, but we're looking at the 90 minutes. In Ten Hag's defence, you've played Fred there.
Yeah. He
was horrendous against Brighton in that role.
Yeah.
You know McTominay can't do it. And then you say, well, he's the best we've got on the ball. Could he just, because he's an intelligent player, I just trust him to be able to just get us by, maybe, in that position. I know it went horribly wrong, but could that be what Ten Hag was thinking out of, I don't trust Fred, I don't trust McTominay, I ain't going to put Donny in the pivot. Some people may say do that instead of that. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but in Ten Hag's defence, was he maybe thinking that with Eriksen?
Yeah, I could see that. And I think in the way Ten Hag set up his team, I don't have a problem with it. I think every manager that comes to the Premier League, they've got to have time to learn. They've got to have time to figure things out. They're all going to make mistakes. Yes, I think it was a 2020 quote from Ten Hag that he said the one mistake that Pep Guardiola made in his career. The biggest mistake he made was when he first came to the Premier League with City. He didn't realise how physical and aggressive it was.
Pep said this.
No, Ten Hag said this
Ten
about
Hag
Pep.
said it about Pep?
About Pep,
Right.
yeah, interestingly. That he didn't understand how aggressive and physical it was. And then Ten Hag's gone and made some of the same mistakes.
So you think that's what's happening here? Ten Hag's just...
He needs time to figure things out, and look, I can understand that, I can forgive that. The issue is really that he's playing players in the wrong place a little bit, and look, for whatever you say, I think what he needs to do is continuity.
At least have him in his best position.
Yes and no. He's played in this deeper role all of pre-season and the first game. And we saw last week in the tactical view we mentioned, Brighton had 4 central midfield players. So McTominay and Fred had a really hard job. Against Brentford, as we'll talk about later, it was often only one player pressing this guy here. And for all his flaws, Fred can normally get out of that sort of situation and he's used to it. He's practiced it, he's been sharp in that role. So I don't understand why he's gone away from the continuity and why he's not just kept Fred there. Outside of that, I think the team selection, it shows belief, but it shows a little bit of naivety as well in a lot of senses because we're not good enough yet to keep the ball, and therefore that would, if we can keep the ball, it nullifies some of their threat from transitions, but we're not good enough for that yet. So that's my criticism really with the team selection.
I think the way you summed it up towards there, it shows like he wants his principles, but it shows a little bit of naivety. Yeah. I think with a new manager though, which we're always used to, but when you look at the managers who have done well, so if you look at Klopp, Pep, and then you look at how Arteta's built his team now, this period has always happened, hasn't it? And that's like with any new managers trying to put new things down. So I agree with that. But I mean, my question is what balance, before we move on, what balance are we doing in terms of you have to get these guys to keep playing that way because that's what you want from them versus they need protecting, might have to go to a 5 at the back until I get a defensive midfielder or until I get a better left. Like, what balance are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the manager individually. Obviously, Pep pretty much religiously stuck to 4-3-3.
He didn't give a shit.
But Arteta did change to 3 at the back at various points. So I think it depends on the manager, and I think also depends on the players. I think for Liverpool next week, we'll come to it at the end, but it might be one of those times when you have to say, you know what, for this one game, we will change a little bit because we don't want to get a pasting. It's not good for anyone's confidence. But also, he needs players. And that's the bottom line. Ten Hag needs better players, but you've got to give him time. You've got to allow him to make mistakes because everyone does. Players, the number of mistakes these players are making, if Ten Hag makes 1 or 2, you've got to let it slide. That's fair enough. The number of mistakes the owners are making, the director of football, the recruitment department, they've all made infinite number of mistakes and they keep making mistakes. Ten Hag makes a few in his first season. We're not going to win anything this year anyway. So just let him have time, let him figure things out, and hopefully we end up in a good place afterwards.
Yeah. Right, Cam. Take us through it tactically. Let's go.
So in theory, just like last week, then we've got a front 3 against 3 centre-backs. So if they do decide to play short, that should match up fairly well in terms of pressing. However, exactly like last week with what Brighton did, instead of playing short, Brentford pretty much exclusively played long, targeting this channel here with Martinez. And obviously, in terms of the way United are with second balls, Tony would come in here, overload the area as well. Meant Shaw had to be really tight. It often sometimes gave space down the line for Hickey because Rashford wasn't really tracking back with him. So again, because even if Martinez does win that ball, because he's not that dominant in the air, oftentimes that ball would drop in around here. And Eriksen and Fred, in that second ball situation when there's a lot of duels to be won, Brentford are congesting that area really well. We struggled to either win the duel to start with, and even in the situations where we did win the duel, we weren't able to play out of that congested area and find space on the opposite side of the pitch. So that was a massive problem for us. So it's not just them playing over and Martinez losing the duel. Even when he does, there's second ball situations that are created, and that's where you want someone like Scott McTominay, who's big and physical. Yes, he can't do a lot else, but at least if you're a big physical lump, someone runs into you, you can at least hopefully end up with the ball and come out in the right place. We didn't win enough of them, and when we did, we couldn't play out of danger into other areas. So these guys come out of it. They've got a lot of players here, big overload, 1 or 2 balls, easy pass, and they may end up scoring. So it's really dangerous, and to be honest, most teams, if you're watching how United play at the minute, that's how you're going to set up. You're going to target that channel, and you know United are not going to do anything about it. So it's a really tough one.
But then, this is what I mean about going forward. It's like, well, what do we do then? Because this is our new centre-half.
Yeah.
He is. People say he's too small, or it's a baptism of fire to the Premier League. You said it at the beginning of this video that it was a little bit arrogant from Ten Hag to persist with that, knowing that's going to happen. Every team's going to do this to us.
100%, 100%. But you can. The good news is you can get better at it. What you've got to do is obviously you can't change his height. But what we can change is our reaction to second balls. We can make sure that when the ball does get in a congested area, these guys all come in and flood the area. We can make sure that we know what we're doing, we're able to play out, we're able to win the ball, and we can get sharper and better in those situations. And if that happens, then his height is less of an issue, and we can actually start making more use of his qualities on the ball. The problem is, in those situations at the moment, we're just simply not good enough. And that is a big part of why Ten Hag wants Adrian Rabiot, because we cannot afford to lose physicality in midfield. McTominay's not good enough technically, obviously.
No.
That's clear for anyone to see, anyone right now. But the reason we want Rabiot is because he's got the frame, the physicality of McTominay's got, but he's better technically. So that's the idea, that's the thinking behind that. And that's why we need it so much. Because with Fred and Eriksen, we struggled. We had none of that at all. And it was a massive problem.
Okay, so what about us in possession then?
So yeah, in possession, last week we talked about the two different shapes that United use. We mentioned the first one where the fullbacks come really deep. We create basically a 4-2-4 to try and stretch the pitch and create space in behind because it baits the press up as high as you can. And there's obviously space in behind for a bit more directness or to try and play through and release one of the forwards. Instead in this game, oftentimes when we had the ball, we had the ball a bit higher up, we had a bit more, well, we thought we'd have a bit more secure possession. So what happened quite often was Dalot inverted, and we've seen that quite a lot during pre-season. And what that ends up forming is this essentially a 2-3-5 structure. So you've got the centre-backs deep, you've then got Eriksen, Luke Shaw and Dalot. And the idea of this, really, is that Jadon Sancho here can be isolated in that 1v1 battle with Rico Henry. So because Dalot comes in, the way it normally works, if you've got a winger out here, if Dalot comes in, drags the winger infield here, so that whenever Maguire's on the ball, Sancho's got an easy pass there. That passing lane is then opened by Dalot coming in.
Just cleared out the space there.
Exactly. Obviously, in this game, what happened was because Brentford had two strikers, most of the time Dalot did this, he was just sitting in Tony's shadow. And so, unless Sancho made a concerted effort to move deep, because obviously against wing-backs he's a lot higher than he would normally be, unless he made that concerted effort to come deep, it didn't really open anything.
No, he just got it there, give it back.
Yeah. And to be honest, if he gives it back, not so much of a problem. But one of the big problems that we saw quite often was that when Sancho was in this position and he did get the ball, if he ends up losing it in this situation, what have we got? Massive problem. Because often Dalot sometimes is a bit higher up the pitch. And when that happens, when we're high up the pitch, Sancho loses the ball there. What do you think they're going to do? As soon as they get it, the target space is right here. And if you leave Maguire defending that entire space, it's a massive problem and obviously end up with predictable consequences with that counter-attacking goal.
Yeah.
So as soon as that ball's lost by Sancho in those positions, that's why it's so important that he's responsible. He cannot take risks there. Yes, maybe when we've got a bit more structure where we know what we're doing, you can. But right now, you can't afford to lose the ball. He lost the ball too many times. One pass, bang, that ball goes in there. He's trying to cover this space. He's got no pace. He's not sweeping. So any ball in this area
was a big problem on both sides as well.
And this is the whole point of playing, of where playing Varane comes in, where having a sweeper keeper comes in, is that because he's so slow and because he's not sweeping, this target area is huge. Any ball into that area, anywhere in here, massive area, it's a good ball because he'll probably get there first. And even if he doesn't, the Brentford team can get up the pitch. If you've got a faster player here, if you've got a keeper that can sweep, this area gets shrunk massively. And then as soon as you start shrinking that area, there's less chance of that ball being effective. And so teams have to start trying things a bit differently. Now, if teams have to play a little bit differently, something they may look to do is rather than hitting a direct ball straight away, they may look to try and play some combinations through midfield to find some space, then play a more controlled direct ball. And what that means then is it brings Dalot into play because he's tucked in. So if they're trying to play combinations through midfield, we've got an extra number here because the fullback's tucked in. But obviously, the inverting of the fullback, yeah, great for that sort of situation if they're playing combinations through midfield. But if you've got a glaring weakness here, they're not going to bother.
So again, is that in-game sort of management that you're talking about to say, okay, we're struggling here, but again, Eric's asked us to play this way with Dalot coming in here, but we're in trouble. So let me hold my position.
Exactly.
Let me try and go and get in with Sancho, maybe go on the overlap, like try and play in a different way. But then, like you said last week, back to there's no plan A, let alone a plan B. They don't have the capacity to work that out through the game. But then is Ten Hag, there was a drinks break after 30 minutes, whatever it is. Why have we not picked up on it then?
I think he did at certain points because you did see as the game went on, we saw Dalot trying to get round a bit more to help out Sancho, and that's what Jadon Sancho needs. When Jadon Sancho plays best, he's not the quickest player.
In one-on-one situations, he's not good enough.
Yeah, he's not great. But when you've got a fullback flying forward, he gets an extra half yard. That's what he needs. He needs runners around him to create space for him. But if you do that, he's a fantastic player. But we haven't quite done that, and that's the issue.
Well, you spoke about it last week. We haven't even got a plan A, let alone a plan B. So in-game management, that's what we're looking for, though, for them to go, tell you what, I'm struggling here. I need to maybe hold my position. And there was a drinks break at like 30, 35 minutes. Why wasn't it picked up then?
Yeah, well, we did see as the game went on, Dallo was sort of helping out Sancho a little bit. He was getting around the outside, and that's what Jadon Sancho needs, obviously. He needs players around him. He needs players on the overlap. That's what makes him best. He needs that player creating the half-yard, because he's not the quickest of players, but if you give him the facilities to play, he will. And we didn't, because Dallo was tucked in most of the time. He was isolated, and that's not where he plays best. And obviously then it gave us the problem on the counter, as we spoke about. But in terms of plan A versus plan B, the way I think about it like an exam in school. If you know the stuff really well, a little, and you're so comfortable with the material or whatever, the slightest tweak in how they ask the question, you'll probably still be able to answer it. You'll probably be okay. You can adapt. If you don't know what's going on, there's a slightest bit that's different, everything's screwed. You're wrong. Yeah. Whatever you put, it just you don't get what's going on. It's all a mess. And that's what's happening here because they aren't fully confident. They haven't fully got that plan A yet. When something slightly different comes up, mentally you can't adjust quickly enough. And in some situations, these guys can do better, but in other situations, it is just more continuity, a bit more fluidity, a bit more time practicing, and hopefully then they'll eventually get there. But it does take time in those situations.
I want to talk now about our setups from goal kicks.
Yeah.
Because this here, let's get him there, and let's get Eriksen here. Okay, the ball's at David De Gea's feet. Now, I'll leave the rest to you, but this was obviously a massive reason to why we kept messing up yesterday. Persistence in trying to play in this way. And a goal comes from it. There was a mistake before the goal even happened that we had to end up knocking the ball out of play, but we persisted with it. Talk us through what should be happening from this position and what Erik ten Hag is actually trying to get us to do, because it looks a mess so far.
Yeah, it looks a mess, and I think one of the things that's a little bit unusual, obviously, is we've got centre-backs taking goal kicks, which you don't always see at the top level. And part of the reason for that is that compared to when the keeper takes it, if you pass out short to one of the centre-backs there, what will then happen straight away is this guy here, the striker this side, will come in, he'll lock off the play, so he'll block that passing lane back, so it forces the team into that side. Or actually, probably it'll be this player coming in. But then what happens then is that the Brentford team can then go and press this side, restricts us to half the pitch, makes it a lot harder for us to play out because there's a lot less area to work with. So the reason behind using a centre-back to take it is essentially that it just holds the pressing team for a bit longer before they can force you to one side. And the idea then is because they're forced to then defend a bit wider for a bit longer, you've got more chance of getting the ball through the lines and trying to find a pass forwards. Now, what happened yesterday with goal kicks was, honestly, it's a disgrace. It didn't work at all. And when Martinez played it to De Gea, what would happen is the Brentford players, Ivan Toney in particular, he would curve his run round, and that's really important here. So rather than just pressing De Gea directly, he would curve his run so that he blocks off the passing lane to Maguire. Yeah. And then he would go and press De Gea.
Basics.
So that takes off one pass there.
Yeah.
He would just go and press Martinez, didn't really need to curve it because the pass has come from Martinez to De Gea. And obviously as soon as Martinez has touched it, he can go and sprint there. But he knows that pass is blocked off. Then Eriksen would show here. Jensen, he was quite smart. He sat off Eriksen a little bit, gave him a little bit of space, and was right on him as soon as he started to show. Now, we saw a few times when it did work and a lot of times when it didn't work. When it did work, what needed to happen from this point, because of what was going on here, what happened when it worked okay was De Gea ping that ball out to Luke Shaw. You've got to do it quickly because as soon as these guys have come in, these guys know you may as well jump because there's no real options. And if 100%. It goes there, the centre-backs are probably going to beat Sancho and Rashford in the aerial duel because Rashford doesn't jump. So he's got to hit that ball quickly out to the fullback. And when that happens, what we did see quite a lot, which was actually really quite effective, was on this side, Rashford dropped in and that dragged the centre-back with him. So Rashford will come in here, so if Shaw's on the ball, Hickey goes up to press him, Rashford drops in to offer that inside option for Shaw. The centre-back comes with him. So what that leaves there is a massive, massive space.
Well, we've ended up creating what they're creating on that side by doing this. You know, when
Similar,
you said when we leaving that big gap in there.
Exactly.
By doing what you're just saying, the same thing could apply.
So what worked really well, what I did like, the element of I liked was Rashford he waited long enough for that ball to hit Shaw so that he wasn't making a slow movement back. He was forcing Roerslev into a really, really quick decision, and that's important, forcing quick decisions. He came deep here, drags him with him, and that leaves a massive space. That leaves half the pitch here for an hour to go. So Shaw at that point needed to just hit that ball long. He's obviously got to have a really good touch. He's got to be spot on there so that he has
there's a lot of things that need to happen for that to actually work.
Exactly.
But the principle's
there. But there is an out ball there. We just didn't use it, and that was really frustrating at times. The other thing that we saw quite often with the playing out and why it ended up going disastrously wrong is small details here. So Maguire and Martinez, they're on the edge of the 6-yard box. And what that means is that this curving the run is possible and then going to press De Gea. Instead, what we needed to see was Maguire and Martinez. As soon as Martinez has taken it, he's got to run back here to the byline. Maguire's got to do the same. You do that, you extend the pitch. You make the area that they've got to press a lot bigger. That makes it harder for them to win the ball, makes it easier for us to find angles to play out. And what it would have meant is that if he then tries to cut this passing lane, he's got to come all the way out here. So there's possibly a big space here for Fernandes to show in, or Sancho or Dalot to come in here and receive the ball. There's more options, and his pressing is much less effective. So in that situation, yes, there was an out ball with the way it was happening, even with Maguire and Lissandro there. But the best thing to do, really, is get these guys on the byline, make the area bigger, and all of a sudden you've got more options, you've got more time on the ball, and you can actually play things through the line. So Ten Hag said after the game that we attracted the Brentford team towards us. Now, that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes when you attract pressure...
That's what you want as part of the plan sometimes.
Exactly. So sometimes Maguire takes too long on the ball, but one of the things he's good at is dragging pressure towards him. He draws pressure, and that can create space in behind. So it's not always about sort of drawing pressure is a bad thing. The game's evolved past that. The whole idea is that we pass the ball to move the opposition, as Guardiola says. So the idea here is if you come deeper, then you can start passing the ball. You move these guys, but you've also got space to play. The way we did it, with Maguire here, and Martinez here as well, they're higher, easy for these guys to press, and we end up turning the ball over and it ends up in the back of our net. So it's small tweaks. It's firstly having the awareness and the distribution quality from De Gea to realise actually the option is there to Luke Shaw, because this guy's playing half and half. He's playing halfway between the winger and the fullback. But if we play short to start with, so Lissandro to De Gea, then this guy will jump. Then if he comes deep, he'll jump as well, and there's a big gap for Ronaldo. Or preferably, and these guys sit on the byline and there's a bit more time and space. And we see that from Man City. I think there was a derby game last year where the City defenders were starting to play like this. It was the one where under Rangnick, where we started with that 4-4-2 with Pogba and Bruno false nines.
Yeah.
First 20, 25 minutes, our pressing actually worked quite well because we were matching up their back four because their back four were higher up. Guardiola literally one simple tweak, told them to stand deeper, game over.
Go on.
Pressing doesn't work because they've got to cover more distance and they can't cover multiple angles.
It's little things that actually can be improved in that that moment.
Again, even with Luke Shaw, I think one of the reasons that sometimes we didn't see that ball coming from De Gea was Luke Shaw's body position. A lot of the time, when it did work, when he did get the ball and was able to play it down the line, his body position, he was sort of, in terms of the line, he was facing sort of back to the touchline. So he was able to receive that ball and play forwards. When De Gea chose not to play the pass, it's because Luke Shaw was back to goal. He was facing towards his own net. So that obviously being left-footed, and
you want to open out your body and open out the pitch to see. You don't want to be facing your own goal.
Exactly, his left foot's inside.
Receiving on your right foot, doesn't want that.
His body shape's wrong. Dalot was a little bit better, but it's those little details, getting the body shape right, getting the positioning right, and then that creates the angles, creates the ability to pass your way out of these situations.
How important is it though, once you said everything, which you said, Martinez needs to be there, Maguire, etc. Eriksen needs to know when to go, his body position, all of that. Having said all of that, how important is it though that he just still makes the right decision? Because we saw in the press conference, I asked Eric myself, because I even done a match review, kind of giving my reaction, and I was convinced that it was naive from Ten Hag, sort of saying they obviously keep doing it because he's telling them that's what we do. And actually, I actually had to revoke that statement really because, we recorded that before the presser and I went in the press and I wanted that cleared up. And he said, no, I don't want us to play like this if it's not on. The way we played today was naive, we invited pressure, etc., etc. So Ten Hag clearly stated to me and to us that I never told them, no matter what happens, keep doing that. Use your sense sometimes.
There is not one football coach in the world, even Pep Guardiola, who says if your players are incredibly tightly marked, pass to them anyway, on the edge of your own box.
Exactly.
Even City go long sometimes, and that's partly why Edison's long boot is so important. He's got a fantastic long pass. But again, you look at the goalkeeper, he's that one person in that position who can see everything. He's the one player looking forward, he's got a whole view of the pitch. You could not possibly have a better view, and he still decides to make that pass. It's amateur. It's really, really bad from De Gea. But again, if you look at this area here, part of the reason, again, we mentioned the 2-3-5 earlier, and against most teams that play with three at the front, the 2-3-5, obviously you've got the full-backs either side, you've got enough players to work it out. You're facing one central striker, you've got the two centre-backs. Here, because you're facing two, you need that extra man.
They're playing in one-on-ones all over, aren't they?
Yeah, but again, exactly. So the one-on-one here, one-on-one there, you need this guy to be the extra man. He's got to be good enough to make use of that.
Yeah.
If your extra man's going to give the ball away and make shit decisions, you're in trouble. Yeah. So that's a big problem. We set this up so that we would have the 3v2, and then he's going to make poor decisions over it.
Okay, let's look forward.
Yeah.
Going into that Liverpool game, What is it that Cam wants to see? What do you want to see? Let's get a blank canvas, okay, or one like that. Okay, there you go. What is it you would like to see in terms of how we attack this game? Because tactically, we obviously got it wrong against Brentford, and tactically, we got outdone against Brighton. So that's 2 games now, and also, if you look at the application, it was all wrong as well. Now, you spoke earlier about, you know, having him in the wrong position, needing a player who can win duels in there.
Yeah.
Do you panic? Do you go to a back 5? We know what's coming with Liverpool. And you speak about them fine moments there. That's Brentford. We know Liverpool hunting packs.
Yeah.
So
100%.
if you were Eric Ten Hag, how would you set us up for Liverpool?
There's a few big calls he's got to make. I think one of those big calls straight away, off the bat, if he keeps the same formation, which I'm not convinced he'll do, the first big call I think he's got to make is Rafael Varane has to play. I think when you're playing in the sort of situations that we're going to be playing against Liverpool, you need someone who can cover ground quickly, who can cover his other players around him. Varane has to play. In terms of the midfield, Fernandes, he's not been good enough for a couple of games. He needs to go. Hopefully that's him gone. Yeah. For all as shit as he is on the ball, we need his ability and
Cam,
duels.
you're
We need
saying
his ability to kick people, cause problems, and he's the man to play in the 10 role.
Oh, right, okay.
I wasn't going to play McTominay in the 10 role.
Right. So
Don't worry.
So you're saying revert back to type in terms of these two in here running around. It's a derby. I think Owen said it in the Full View, or one of the shows we did recently, and he went, ironically, the game against Liverpool is the game where you need people. Like, we're not better than them.
No.
It's at home. It's a derby. You do need people running about the pitch.
Yeah.
But this geezer here, like,
That's all he does.
He's been so bad. But are you saying you'd still trust in that would give us a better chance of doing something?
Yeah.
Really?
I think. Look,
explain what you mean by
that. At this moment in Ten Hag's career, he's got to stick to his principles. He's got to stick to his shape. He's got to stick to the structure. Yes, we'll probably get pasted. It's not going to go well this game.
Regardless
I
of who.
cannot see a way it goes well. The amount of toxicity around the club, the protests that will happen, and on the pitch, it's a disaster right now. It's not going to go well. So he's got to stick to his principles, stick to his structure, and use it as a learning experience as much as possible.
Okay.
I think in terms of the players he's got, he must have learned from this Brentford game. You need players that are good in duels, because obviously Liverpool, just like Brentford did, will target the Martinez channel, and there'll be a lot of second balls.
And now they've got Núñez as well.
Exactly. So what do you think Núñez is going to do? He's going to peel onto him the entire game. So that means Luke Shaw's got to play for his height. That means Varane. It may even be that Harry Maguire has to play.
Does Luke Shaw need to play in this game?
Yes.
Not Malacia.
Luke Shaw has been terrible, but because of Martinez's problem with height, you need him playing.
Why?
Just because he's big, just because he's strong, he can win a duel, he can win stuff in the air.
But Luke Shaw's been terrible. Why wouldn't you give this kid a chance? Why?
I would like to, but then you're playing the left side of the defence whose average height is 5'7".
So basically, just because he's smaller than Shaw.
Yeah,
Shaw's not exactly.
That is it. I think honestly, in a one-on-one battle, I actually trust Malacia more against Mo Salah because he's tenacious. He'll keep at it. He may even do a better job.
Luke Shaw's been horrendous the last 2 games, Ken.
He's been horrendous. He has been really, really bad. And the problem is he keeps making the same mistakes that he's been making for ages. So many times, like if he's defending against the winger, he'll just, you know what? I'm not even going to bother coming close. I'm probably out of shot now. That's how far back I am. Yeah. That's how bad Luke Shaw is at this point.
But that's what I'm saying. If you do that against Salah, he's going to get a first half hat trick.
I think he's getting a first half hat trick anyway, let's be honest.
Okay, so you wouldn't. So I'm surprised at that. I really thought you'd have brought Malacia in.
I want to, but I think just for height, especially against Núñez, you're going to have to play Luke Shaw. And it may be that Harry Maguire has to play as well. But I think you need Scott McTominay in there for his height and physicality. I don't want him in there, but for the physicality, for the duels, he's got to be in there.
So what?
Ericsson's got to be in there because he'll look after the ball.
Donny can't do that, get in there and. No, obviously not physicality wise, but
he's nowhere near in
we need the runners. Okay.
I possibly put Donny in there in the 10 role if Ericsson's not fully fit.
Right.
But I think Ericsson looks after the ball better, and that's going to be important. We can't be giving it away stupidly like Bruno does. He's not playing, not a chance. He won't be pressing, and that forces us deeper.
Is Martial even going to be ready?
Martial.
That's the question.
I mean, he's not even on here. We're not even assuming he'll be ready.
Exactly.
But we're playing with an invisible striker at the minute. But.
But basically, you mean Martial. He's not there now, but you mean Martial.
Yeah, so Martial will be up top, I hope. And in many ways, we've seen him through pre-season. He is the glue that holds the rest together. I honestly do think if you play those three behind Martial, I think when we attack, when we combine, we'll see a few more glimpses of what the side we're supposed to be and the thing what we're trying to do. The problem is, it's a decision for Ten Hag. Do you stick with your philosophy? Do you stick with your principles? Do you play the likes of Diogo Dalot, or do you think, hang on? If he's up against Luis Diaz, we need someone that can handle that. That's Wan-Bissaka. For me, I
Would
would
you do that? Would you look at that?
I definitely look at it. I would probably stick with Dallo.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important that we have enough outlets on the ball and we're able to still pass the ball
Yeah, when we
forwards.
do actually.
I think big picture, we're trying to create a way of playing, and I think changing that for individual games, yes, it may be worth it, but realistically, we're not going to win the title anyway. So losing 3 points against Liverpool when we might be able to get one by changing our principles completely, I think it's worth just sticking to it. Yes, we'll probably get pasted, but I think it's got to be done. In goal, honestly, I would drop David De Gea. Ten Hag's come out after the game and he said, yeah, he sees De Gea doing the right things in training. What else can he say?
You want Tom Heaton in?
I don't think we even have, but I think it's not the right. Yeah. There's nothing else that Ten Hag can say.
Cam's picking players on the board that ain't even on there because I just.
But that's how
I only plan for I think what Cam's gonna do, and Martial going for straight away.
That's how drastic it is.
Tom Heaton straight away.
Honestly, this guy. we talked earlier. We mentioned when we illustrated it on the pitch here, the amount of space we've got. Varane helps with that because he's quicker. He can cover ground. You need someone that can sweep as well to make that gap smaller. It makes things harder for opposition.
So you think Tom Heaton is better at doing that in this right now than David De Gea would be, rather than to say,
100%.
David, go again, we trust in you?
Tom Heaton's better, and it's nothing to do with David De Gea's technique.
Right.
I guarantee you, in training, he can distribute the way he wants to do, and he'll come out and sweep. Nothing to do with his technique. It's everything to do with his mentality.
Yeah.
He's not brave. He does not have the courage to come out and sweep. He doesn't have the courage to catch crosses. You saw, it's not very often that you can say a keeper had a major part to play in all 4 goals conceded. And you could even argue all 6 this season, the ones against Brighton as well. It's bad. And you know what he's like when he's got his head down? We know he can't distribute. We know he can't catch crosses. We know he can't sweep. And now he can't even stop shots. And we were saying this long before the individual mistake. And look, he's not going to let something through his hands every week. At least I hope not. At that point, obviously, you've got to drop it.
Yeah.
But even irrespective of that, because that shouldn't happen all the time, he just isn't good enough. He's so far below all the other keepers in the league. He's the 19th best goalkeeper in the Premier League last season for catching crosses and sweeping. 19th best. Second worst. The only one that was worse was Bachmann from Watford. And we were still linked with him. He was the one we were thinking about to be our second choice.
And he started well in the Championship as well. Okay. The last question, just simple yes or no, really. Do you think Ten Hag will make some viable changes, and do you think he will change to a back 5?
Honestly, I can't predict what's coming tomorrow. No idea.
Yeah.
State we're in, no idea. I think there'll be a couple of changes. I think he will realise that McTominay, as much as we don't want to see him play, he'll have to play. These guys aren't good enough to just trust their technical side, to trust that they'll keep the ball enough. So you're going to have to play players that are good in duels and good out of possession.
Okay, there you have it, guys. That was the tactical view, the mistake view, the therapy view, whatever view you want to call it. That's just what it was with Cam. Going into that Liverpool game, we know what's coming. We know what's about to happen. Let us know in the comments if you agree with how Cam broke it down. Do you agree with some of his takes today? McTominay back in, thinks it was a mistake that McTominay didn't play. Martinez, he thinks that's a little bit of an area of concern. Not bringing in Malacia and sticking with Shaw. And the Martial situation, hopefully he's fit, we're not sure yet. But let us know if you agree with Cam, and let us know what your other alternatives would be. Smash a like on the video, guys. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. We're out of here. Peace.